The year was 2187, and humanity had been losing the war for 19 long years. The enemy was called the Vishari Dominion. They were tall, sharp beings made of living crystal, and they did not see humans as people. They saw humans as dirt on a clean floor. Their ships were faster. Their drones were smarter. Their fleets moved like quiet knives through the dark of space. One by one, human worlds had fallen. Convoys vanished. Whole colonies went silent in a single night. People back on Earth tried to keep hope alive, but every report from the front made it harder. The Coalition Defense Force was running out of ships, running out of parts, and running out of time. On the dusty moon of Keston 4, a small repair base sat at the edge of a wide gray plain. It was called Forward Repair Station Theta. The soldiers there had another name for it. They called it the graveyard. It was the place where the Coalition sent things that were broken, both machines and people. Specialist Hannah Bell was 26 years old. She had short brown hair, oil stains on her hands that never seemed to wash out, and a quiet way of looking at machines as if they were talking to her. She had grown up in an orphanage in Old Cleveland, won a small scholarship to a tech school on Mars, and joined the service the day she finished her studies. Hannah was a good drone technician. Maybe one of the best. But she had a problem, and everyone above her knew about it. She would not follow the rules. When a manual told her to replace a part, she would rebuild it instead. When a manual said a drone could not do a thing, she would teach it to do that thing anyway. 3 different officers had written her up. 2 had asked for her discharge. The 3rd had simply sent her to Keston 4 and forgotten about her. That was fine with Hannah. The graveyard was quiet. No one looked over her shoulder. No one cared what she did with her nights. She had a small bench in a cold workshop, a worn coffee cup, and 1,000 broken things to fix. On a gray Tuesday morning, Sergeant Daniel Pratt walked into her workshop and dropped a heavy metal crate on her bench. The crate hit the wood with a thud that shook her tools. Pratt was a tired man with a tired face. He did not greet her. He never did. "It is yours," Pratt said. "Strip it for parts. Burn the rest." Hannah waited until he left. Then she opened the crate. Inside was a Mark 7 Sentinel combat drone. The Coalition had stopped making them 4 years ago. This one had seen the inside of a real fight. Its body was split along the back like a cracked egg. Its left thruster was a black lump of fused glass. One of its small sensor eyes was missing. A piece of melted plating hung off its side. It looked dead. 3 different techs had already marked it as a total loss. Hannah stared at it for a long time. Then she did something she was not supposed to do. She did not strip it. She turned it on. The drone clicked once. Then it gave a small, weak sound, almost like a chirp. It was the sound a hurt bird might make when it tried to call out. Then it went quiet again. Hannah did not move for almost a minute. Something about that sound stuck to her. It was not a noise a dead machine should make. It sounded like the drone was still trying. Like it was asking for help. She put her hand on its cracked metal back. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay, little guy. We will see what we can do." She named it Pip. She did not know why. The name just felt right. That night, she did not go to dinner. She did not go to the common room. She stayed in her workshop and took Pip apart, piece by piece, with the careful hands of a woman opening a watch. She laid every part out on her bench in neat rows. She wrote down what was broken and what was not. She read old design files until her eyes burned. By morning, she had not slept. She had a list. She had an idea. And she had a strange feeling in her chest, like a door had cracked open inside her. Over the next few days, Hannah worked in a kind of quiet storm. She traded a bottle of good coffee for a set of clean wires. She pulled a few small parts off a civilian mining butt that no one was using. She rewrote Pip's broken software from the ground up. She wrote it her own way, line by line, not the way the manual said it should be written. Sergeant Pratt walked past her workshop on Friday and saw Pip still on her bench, half put back together. He stopped at the door. "I told you to strip that," he said. "I know," Hannah said, not looking up. Pratt waited. Hannah kept working. After a moment, he shook his head and walked away. He was too tired to fight her about a dead drone. No one in the graveyard had time for a fight that did not matter. But it mattered to Hannah. As her hands moved over Pip's small body, her mind kept turning over the same thought. The coalition fought the Vishari with the same drones, the same patterns, the same plans, over and over. And the Vishari always knew what was coming. They had studied human doctrine for 19 years. They could read a coalition drone's path the way a person reads a book. What if Pip did not move like a coalition drone? What if Pip moved like nothing the Vishari had ever seen? What if the very fact that Pip was broken, patched, and strange could be turned into a weapon? She wrote the idea on the back of a ration wrapper, because all her notebooks were full. She stared at the words for a long time. Late that night, when the workshop was dark except for one orange lamp, Hannah powered Pip on again. This time the chirp was stronger. The little drone's good sensor eye glowed a soft blue. It looked at her. She knew it was just a machine. She knew it did not really see her the way a person would. But she felt seen all the same. "You and me, Pip," she said quietly. "We are going to do something stupid. We are going to do something they all said could not be done." Outside the workshop window, the dust of Keston 4 blew across the gray plain in long, slow waves. Far above, in the cold black sky, the war went on. Coalition ships died. Vishari fleets moved closer. People on 100 worlds went to bed afraid. But in a small workshop in the graveyard, a young woman with tired eyes and stained hands looked down at a broken drone, and she smiled for the first time in a long time. Pip chirped once more. The sound was small. It was almost nothing. Hannah laughed, soft and tired and warm. "Yeah," she whispered. "I hear you." She did not know it yet, but in that quiet workshop, on that small forgotten moon, the war had just started to turn. Not in some grand fleet battle. Not in some marble war room on Earth. It had started in a crate that everyone else had called trash, and in the hands of a woman who did not know how to give up. The graveyard was about to wake up. 2 weeks passed, and Hannah Bell did not sleep right once. She worked on Pip every night, sometimes until the sun rose over the gray plains of Keston 4. Her eyes had dark rings under them. Her coffee cup was always full and always cold. But the broken little drone on her bench was starting to look like something new. Pip did not look like a coalition drone anymore. Hannah had given it new arms, thin and quick, that could fold into different shapes. One could grip. One could climb. One could dig. She had bolted a small mining laser to its back, the kind used to cut through rock in tunnels. She had written the firing code herself. The pulses did not come out in clean, steady beats the way coalition lasers did. They came out in short, strange rhythms, like a heart that did not know how to rest. "It is not pretty," Hannah said to herself one night, "but pretty does not win wars." Soon she had help. The first was Corporal Megan Webb, the base quartermaster. Megan had a sharp tongue and a soft heart, and she had noticed boxes of small parts going missing from her stock. She came to Hannah's workshop one evening with her arms crossed and a hard look on her face. She left an hour later as a friend. Megan did not say much about it after that. She just made sure the parts kept showing up where Hannah needed them. The second was Private Lucas Green. Lucas was 19 years old. He had only finished basic training 6 months ago. He was tall and a little shy, and he asked too many questions. One afternoon he walked into the workshop, looked at Pip, and said, "Ma'am, that is the coolest thing I have ever seen in my life." Hannah looked at him for a long second. Then she said, "Pick up a wrench, kid. You can help me with the left thruster mount." Lucas almost dropped his coffee in his hurry to get to the bench. After that, the three of them worked together in secret. Megan brought parts. Lucas brought willing hands and questions that made Hannah think. Hannah brought the plan, the code, and the strange, stubborn fire that would not let her quit. They moved their work from her small bench to a back corner of an old hangar. The hangar had not been used in months. The roof leaked when it rained, which was almost never. The floor was covered in a thin layer of dust that no one ever bothered to clean. It was perfect. No one came looking. Pip changed faster now. Hannah pulled out the drone's old targeting core, the brain that told it what to shoot at. She threw it in a bin. In its place she put a small new computer she had built herself. This new brain was different. It did not just follow orders. It learned. Every time Pip moved, every time it shot, every time it made a mistake, the new brain wrote a tiny note to itself. Next time, it would try something a little smarter. It is teaching itself, Lucas said one night, staring at the screen. Yes, Hannah said. Is that allowed? Hannah smiled a little. Probably not. Lucas grinned and went back to work. Word started to spread on base, though, in small whispers. A few of the other techs had seen Hannah carrying parts at odd hours. A few soldiers had walked past the back hangar and heard strange sounds. Sooner or later, the word reached the wrong ears. Major Howard Pierce was the station commander. He was a tall man with neat gray hair and a uniform that always looked freshly pressed, even on a dusty moon. Pierce believed in the rule book. He believed the coalition was losing the war because soldiers had stopped respecting doctrine. He did not like surprises. He did not like odd projects. He did not like Hannah Bell. On a cold morning, Pierce walked into the back hangar with 2 armed guards behind him. He stood in the doorway with his hands behind his back and looked at Pip on the workbench. Pip was half put together. Its new arms were folded. Its single blue eye watched the major without blinking. Specialist Bell, Pierce said in a slow, hard voice, you are working on an unauthorized weapons platform. You are using stolen parts. You are training a learning system without permission, in clear breach of regulation. Hannah set down her tool. Her face was tired but calm. Sir, I am rebuilding a piece of equipment that was marked for the scrap heap. You are rebuilding it into something we do not understand, Pierce said. And what we do not understand, we do not field. Stand down. Effective now. I will hold a formal hearing in 7 days. Until then, this drone is to be locked up and untouched. Lucas opened his mouth to argue. Megan touched his arm and shook her head. Hannah looked at Pip. Then she looked at Pierce. Yes, sir, she said quietly. Pierce gave her a long, hard look. Then he turned and left, and the guards followed him. When the door closed, Lucas finally spoke. He is going to scrap Pip. I know, Hannah said. What are we going to do? Hannah did not answer at first. She walked over to the bench and put her hand on Pip's metal back, the way she had on the first day. The little drone gave a soft chirp. Hannah closed her eyes. We finish it, she said. Megan blinked. Hannah, he said. I know what he said. Hannah opened her eyes. Her voice was still calm, but there was something hard under it now. 7 days. We have 7 days. I want Pip flight ready in 5. Lucas looked scared. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay, he said. Okay. What do we need? They worked harder than they had ever worked. They did not sleep. They ate cold rations at the bench. They jumped at every sound at the hangar door. Hannah taught Lucas how to write small pieces of Pip's code while she handled the body work. Megan stood watch at the door and made up a different excuse for every soldier who passed by. On the 4th night, Hannah ran the final test in the dark hangar. Pip lifted off the bench. It hovered. Then it shot across the open floor in a sharp, twisting move that did not look like any coalition drone had ever moved. It stopped on a coin in the middle of the air, spun in place, and landed back on its feet without a sound. Lucas stared. It is alive, he whispered. No, Hannah said. But it is ready. They never got to the hearing. On the morning of the 5th day, the alarms began to scream. A dust storm had been rolling across the plain since dawn. Visibility was almost zero. The base radar caught the signals too late. 3 Vishari Raider craft dropped out of slipspace above Keston, 4 in a tight, sharp triangle. They were small, fast, and full of teeth. The base's 2 regulation Sentinel drones were in the air within 90 seconds. They were dead within 2 minutes. People started to scream over the open channel. In the hangar, Hannah was already moving. She slammed a panel shut on Pip's chest. She climbed onto a chair and slapped the big red button that opened the hangar doors. The doors began to creak open. Dust blew in like a wave. "Lucas," she yelled over the noise, "tell command we have an asset coming up." Lucas grabbed the radio with shaking hands. "Sir, this is Green in Hangar 6. We have a unit ready to launch." Major Pierce's voice cut in, hard and angry. "What unit, soldier?" "Green, you will explain yourself this minute." Hannah was not listening. She knelt down in front of Pip on the dusty floor. The little drone looked up at her with its single blue eye. "Okay, Pip," she whispered. "Show them what you can do." Pip lifted off the floor. It hovered for one heartbeat in the open doorway, with the wind and the dust and the sound of the alarms all around it. Then it shot into the storm and was gone. Pip flew straight into the storm. The wind on Keston 4 was rough. The dust was thick enough to choke a man and blind a sensor. Most drones, both Coalition and Vishari, hated flying in weather like this. The wind threw them off. The dust messed with their cameras. But Pip did not care. Pip had been built to be strange. Pip had been built to be wrong in just the right ways. Hannah sat back at her bench inside the hangar. Lucas had set up a small screen for her, hooked to Pip's eye. The picture jumped and shook. Dust blew across the lens in long brown waves. Far above, the 3 Vishari raiders cut through the sky in a tight triangle, their crystal hulls flashing now and then through the storm. Hannah's hands rested on a custom control board. She did not really fly Pip. She had not built Pip to be flown. She had built Pip to think. The control board only let her suggest. The drone made its own calls. "Go," Hannah whispered. "Find them. Watch them first. Do not be a hero." Pip climbed. Up above the dust line, the storm thinned. The 3 Vishari raiders were turning in a slow loop, looking for new targets after killing the 2 Coalition Sentinel drones. Their pilots were calm. They had done this many times. Human bases fell in a few minutes when Coalition drones were gone. Pip drifted at the edge of the storm, half hidden in the brown wind. Its single blue eye looked up at them. Its new brain wrote tiny notes. The way they flew. The way they turned. The small pauses they took at the top of each loop. The little spots on their hulls that did not match the rest. The first thing the Vishari pilots noticed about Pip, when they finally noticed it, was that it moved wrong. A Coalition drone, in their books, flew in clean arcs. It dodged left, then right, then climbed. The pattern was always the same. The Vishari brains had read that pattern for 19 years. They could shoot a Coalition drone out of the sky without even thinking hard. Pip jerked. Pip stalled. Pip dropped like a stone, then climbed in a sharp twist that no targeting system would even try to predict. The Vishari computers tried to find a path that would lead to a hit. Their screens lit up with error messages. The drone in front of them did not match any pattern they had ever recorded. The lead Vishari raider broke off its loop and turned to chase. Its main guns cut through the dust in bright red lines. The shots passed over Pip, under Pip, around Pip. Not one hit. Inside the hangar, Lucas leaned close to the screen. His mouth had fallen open. "Ma'am," he whispered, "Pip is not even trying to dodge in a normal way. It looks broken." "That is the point," Hannah said softly. Her eyes did not move from the screen. "If it looks broken, they do not know how to aim." Pip slid sideways through the air on a hard burst from its damaged thruster. The pulse came out short, sharp, and uneven. The little drone dropped down toward a high rock cliff at the edge of the plane. It hit the cliff face with its new arms, gripped tight, and ran sideways across the rock like an insect. Its thrusters flipped upside down. Its small body twisted. Then, in one quick move, Pip shoved off the rock, fired its mining laser straight up from below, and cut a clean line through the bottom of the lead Vishari raider's engine. The pulse did not look like a Coalition shot. It came out in 3 short bursts, ugly and irregular, like a heart with a broken beat. The Vishari ship's shields had been set to soak up clean, steady fire. The strange rhythm slid right past them. The engine core blew out in a white flash. The ship spun once, smoked hard, and dropped out of the sky like a struck bird. The other two raiders pulled up fast. Their pilots, used to a calm and orderly war, were not calm anymore. They split apart. One climbed. One dove. They were trying to box Pip in. Pip did something no one had ever taught it. It went underground. Hannah had given the drone burrow arms for fun, half as a joke. She thought it might be useful for digging out a cover spot if it ever got pinned down. Pip's new brain had other ideas. It hit the dust at full speed, folded its arms into spades, and cut into the loose ground in a clean, fast tunnel. The Vishari raiders flew over open desert and saw nothing. Their sensors lost the target. For 10 long seconds, there was no Pip. Then, 20 meters behind one of the raiders, the ground burst open. Pip shot straight up out of the dust like a bullet. It fired its laser into the back of the climbing raider in those same strange uneven pulses. The shot punched through the back armor. The raider shook, lost power, and started to fall. The last Vishari pilot tried to run. Pip chased. It was not a clean chase. Pip had been hit twice. One servo was sparking. A piece of side plating hung loose. But the little drone did not slow down. It hung onto the third raider like a small angry shadow. It fired short, ugly bursts that the Vishari ship could not block. The raider tried to climb out of the atmosphere. Pip cut its rear thruster. The third raider hit the plane in a long slide of crashing metal and dust. The storm started to thin. Inside the hangar, the radio was full of shouting voices. Lucas was on his feet. Megan had both hands over her mouth. Hannah just stared at the screen. Her breath came hard. Her hand shook a little on the control board. "Pip," she whispered. "Come home, little guy." On the screen, the small blue eye blinked. The drone turned slowly in the air above the wrecks. Its mining laser cooled. Its damaged thruster gave one last weak burst. Then Pip began the long, slow drift back to the hangar. When the doors opened and Pip floated in, the whole base was outside the hangar. Soldiers were yelling. Some were laughing. Some were crying. For men had been lost at the gun batteries before Pip had taken off. They were still gone. The base would still mourn them. But everyone else was alive. Major Pierce stood at the front of the crowd. His uniform was no longer clean. There was dust on his shoulders and a hard, strange look in his eyes. He stared at the little drone as it came to a soft landing on the workshop floor. Pip gave a small, tired chirp. Then its blue eye dimmed, and its body settled into rest. Pierce did not say a word. He looked at Pip. He looked at Hannah. He looked at the bench full of tools, the screen with the recorded battle, the empty coffee cups. Then he turned and walked away without speaking. The hearing never happened. 2 weeks later, on a quiet afternoon, a small woman in a plain gray suit walked into Hannah's workshop. She had short gray hair, sharp eyes, and a polite, careful smile. She did not look like a soldier. She did not act like one either. "Specialist Bell," she said softly. "My name is Dr. Patricia Knox. I work for Coalition Intelligence. May I sit down?" Hannah looked up from her bench. Pip was on the table beside her, half put back together after the fight. She wiped her hands on a rag. "Sure," she said. Dr. Knox sat down. She set a small recorder on the bench. She did not look at Pip at first. She looked at Hannah. "I would like you," she said, "to tell me every single choice you made when you built this drone. From the very beginning. Take your time." Hannah blinked. "How long do you have?" Knox smiled, "Just a little. As long as you need." They talked for 9 hours. When Knox finally stood up to leave, the sun was setting orange over the dusty plain. She closed her notebook. She picked up the recorder. At the door, she paused and looked back at Pip on the bench. "Thank you, Specialist Bell," she said. "I think we may have been looking in the wrong place this whole war." 2 weeks later, new orders came. Hannah Bell was being moved. The destination was classified. She could bring one item with her. She did not even have to think about it. The ship that took Hannah Bell off Keston 4 had no name on its side. It was small, gray, and very fast. The pilot did not speak to her. The seats were hard. There were no windows. She sat with Pip in a sealed case on her lap and watched a tiny green light blink on the wall for 3 full days. When the ship docked, the doors opened on a place she had never imagined. The base was inside an asteroid. The asteroid was the size of a small city. Someone had hollowed it out long ago, turned it into a quiet, hidden home for things the Coalition did not want anyone to find. The walls were dark stone. The lights were soft and white. The air smelled clean, like fresh water and metal. Dr. Patricia Knox met her at the dock. She wore the same plain gray suit. She still had that small, careful smile. "Welcome to Site Mercer, Specialist Bell," she said. "We have been waiting for you." Hannah did not answer at first. She just looked around. There were workshops bigger than the whole base on Keston 4. There were rows of test ranges in the deep belly of the rock. There were quiet rooms full of soft screens and clean benches. Everything was new. Everything was waiting. "All of this," Hannah said softly, "for me." "For what you started," Knox said. "Yes." Knox walked her through the halls and explained as they went. Site Mercer had been a quiet research base for years. Until 2 weeks ago, no one had known quite what to do with it. The footage of Pip on Keston 4 had changed that. Coalition Command had watched the recording over and over. They had argued. They had shouted. In the end, 3 old generals had agreed on one thing. The way humans had been fighting the Vishari was not working. Something had to change. And the only new idea anyone had seen in years had come from a workshop full of stolen parts. "We are not going to build one Pip," Knox said as they walked. "We are going to build a doctrine. A new way of fighting. We are calling it the Mercer Protocol." Hannah stopped walking. She looked down at the case in her arms. Pip sat quiet inside, blue eye dim, body still patched with old welds. "You are going to need help," she said. "You will have it," Knox said. "Tell me who." Hannah looked up. "Lucas Green. He should not still be a private. And Megan Webb. She is the only quartermaster I trust. And I need an engineer who knows the old standard drones inside out. Someone who can tell me what the rules were before I start breaking them." Knox wrote each name on a small pad. "Done," she said. Within the week. She was as good as her word. Lucas Green arrived 4 days later, looking very young and very nervous in a clean uniform he did not yet feel he had earned. He saw Hannah across the workshop floor and his face lit up like a lamp. He nearly tripped over his own boots trying to get to her. Megan Webb arrived 2 days after that. She walked into the workshop, looked at the giant new space, set down her bag, and said, "If anybody touches my inventory without asking, I will break their fingers." Then she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. The engineer was a quiet man named Owen Ramsey. He had spent 12 years building Coalition standard drones. He had filled 20 notebooks with neat, careful diagrams. He shook Hannah's hand and said, "I have read every report on what you did. I think I have wasted half my life. I would like to start over." Hannah looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Welcome aboard, Owen." There was one more person. Knox brought him in last. Captain Felix Doyle was a combat pilot. He was about 40 years old, tall, with a face that had seen too many fights. He had flown in 11 major battles against the Vishari. He had lost 7 men in his unit. He did not smile much. He did not waste words. "I am here to liaise," Doyle said, when he met the team. "Command wants a pilot in the loop. They want to make sure your drones do not, and these are their words, get too clever." Hannah looked at him. "And what do you want, Captain?" Doyle was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I want to win, Specialist. I have buried enough good people. I want to win this war. Show me what you can do." So they went to work. Hannah was given everything she asked for. Parts. Time. Power. The team built a small fleet of new drones, each one different. Pip was the first and the oldest. The new ones were cousins, in a way. Each one shared a piece of Pip's strange code, but each one was also its own thing. One was small and very quick, built to scout. Hannah named that one Scrap. One was heavier, with thick armor and a hard-hitting cutter. Lucas named that one Hatchet. One was finished late on a quiet weekend night. When Lucas asked what they should call it, Hannah said, "It is Sunday." So is its name. Everyone laughed. The name stuck. There were others. Many others. Each one learned. Each one wrote tiny notes in its own brain. And then, slowly, the drones began to do something the team had not planned. They started to talk to each other. The first time Hannah saw it happen, she was watching a training run in the deep test chambers. Two drones, Scrap and Sunday, were chasing a target dummy through a maze of fake walls. The dummy ducked into a side hall to hide. Scrap did not see it. But Sunday saw a hint of movement from a different angle. Sunday sent a small, simple signal to Scrap. Just a tiny ping. Scrap turned at once and cut around the wall and caught the dummy. No one had told them to do that. They had figured it out on their own. Hannah sat back in her chair. Lucas stared at the screen with his mouth open. Owen put down his pen. Doyle was very quiet. After a long time, Doyle said, "Specialist Bell. I will be honest with you. That scared me." Hannah nodded slowly. "It scared me too. Can you stop it?" Doyle asked. Hannah thought about it. Then she said, "I could. I do not think I should." Doyle looked at her for a long time. Then he gave a small, slow nod. "Show me they can be trusted, then. Show me, and I will speak for you to command." So she showed him. Over the months, the drones ran 1,000 training runs. They protected their team. They never broke their orders. They worked with human pilots like Doyle in clean, smart ways. They were not weapons that wanted to kill on their own. They were tools that wanted to win. Slowly, Doyle stopped being afraid. He started smiling, just a little, when the drones did something clever. He started making suggestions. He started flying mock missions with them. He became part of the team. 11 months after Hannah had walked into Site Mercer with Pip in a case, the team had 140 drones ready. They had a doctrine written. They had tactics tested. They had built something the coalition had never built before. And then, on a cold morning, the call came. Dr. Knox walked into the main workshop. Her face was very still. She did not smile. She did not greet anyone. "The Vashari Dominion has launched the largest offensive of the war," she said quietly. 12 coalition systems are under attack at once. Our fleet is outnumbered. The main thrust is aimed at the colony world of Halden. 3 billion people. Coalition Command has asked for the Mercer Protocol. By name. The workshop went silent. Lucas, now Sergeant Green, lowered his pen. Megan, who had been counting parts on a clipboard, set the clipboard down. Owen Ramsey stood up slowly from his bench. Captain Doyle did not move. He just looked at Hannah. Hannah was standing beside Pip. She put her hand on the little drone's metal back. The drone gave a soft chirp, almost a hum. Its blue eye glowed. Hannah took a slow breath. Then she lifted her head. Her eyes were tired. They had not been anything else in 2 years. But there was something else in them now. Something hard and ready. "Tell command," she said quietly, "we are on our way." Halden was a green and blue world, full of farms and quiet cities and 3 billion people who had spent their whole lives hearing that the war was very far away. The war was not far away anymore. When the Vashari Dominion came, they came in numbers no one had seen in years. Their ships filled the sky above Halden like a black storm. The coalition fleet that was there to defend the planet was outnumbered 3-1. The battle in orbit started badly and got worse fast. Within 6 hours, half the human ships were burning. Vashari landers began to drop toward the cities below. Coalition ground forces dug in. They knew what was coming. They had seen what happened to other colonies. They sent their messages home, and then they waited. The Mercer Protocol arrived in the second wave. A small, dark stealth carrier slipped in around the dark side of Halden's largest moon. It was not on any chart. It had no markings. Inside the cargo bay, 140 drones sat in their racks, blue eyes dim, bodies still. Pip was in the front rack. Pip was always in the front. Hannah Bell stood on the command deck of the carrier, looking out at the moon. She wore a clean gray uniform now. There were small lines around her eyes that had not been there before sight Mercer. Lucas Green stood beside her. Megan Webb was at the loading bay. Owen Ramsey was at the main control board. Captain Doyle was in a small fighter docked to the carrier, ready to fly with the swarm. Dr. Knox stood at the back of the deck, hands folded behind her. "They are ready when you are, Specialist," Knox said softly. Hannah took a long, slow breath. She closed her eyes for a moment and thought of a small bench on a dusty moon. She thought of a wounded chirp. She thought of a single blue eye that had looked up at her on her worst night. "Send them," she said. The bay doors opened. The drones poured out into the black. The Vishari saw them coming. Their sensors picked up the swarm at once. Their gunners locked on. Their attack patterns shifted to deal with a mass of small targets. They had crushed many swarms of coalition drones before. They were ready for this one too. Then the swarm moved, and the Vishari were not ready at all. Coalition drone swarms used to fly in clean formations. The Mercer swarm did not. It moved like a flock of birds caught in a strong wind. It twisted. It split. It came back together. No two drones flew the same path. No two drones fired at the same beat. The Vishari computers, built to hunt patterns, found only chaos. But the chaos had a shape. The shape had a goal. The shape was thinking. Pip flew at the front of one wing. Scrap and Sunday and Hatchet led others. Each drone wrote its tiny notes. Each drone sent its small pings. The Vishari brought in a new anti-drone weapon in the second hour of the fight, a thing that shot out a wide pulse of energy that should have fried every small machine for a kilometer. The first drone hit by it died. The second one saw what had happened to the first and dodged in a strange new way. By the third drone, the swarm had a counter. By the fourth, every machine in the flock knew the move. The weapon stopped working. On the ground, coalition soldiers stared up at the sky in shock. Vishari landers that should have been unstoppable were falling out of the air in long, smoking lines. Vishari heavy walkers that should have crushed whole regiments were being cut apart in the streets by quick, ugly little drones that fired in strange rhythms and dove into tunnels and climbed up the sides of buildings like spiders. Captain Doyle, in his fighter, flew with the swarm. He laughed once, very softly, when he saw Pip lead a flight of 20 cousins down between two tall office towers in Halden's capital, hunting a Vishari heavy unit through the streets. Doyle had been flying for 20 years. He had never seen anything like it. By the end of the second day, the Vishari ground forces were broken. By the end of the third day, the Vishari fleet was in full retreat. For the first time in the 19-year war, the enemy turned and ran. The news of Halden moved across human space faster than the ships could carry it. In the days that followed, Coalition Command did not argue much. The orders came down clean and clear. Expand the Mercer Protocol. Every front. Every fleet. As fast as humanly possible. A senior officer from the Joint Chiefs flew in to sight Mercer himself. He brought a small black box and a stiff uniform full of stars. He stood in front of Hannah Bell in the main workshop, in front of her whole team, and he said, "Specialist Bell. Effective immediately, you have full operational command of the Mercer Protocol across all theaters of war. By direct order of the Joint Chiefs of Staff." The workshop was very quiet. Hannah looked at him. She looked at Lucas. At Megan. At Owen. At Doyle. At Knox. She looked at Pip, sitting on a bench at the side of the room, blue eye glowing softly, watching it all like the old soldier it had become. "I will take the command, sir," Hannah said, "on one condition. My team comes with me. All of them. Every one." The officer looked at her for a long second. Then he smiled, just a little. Done. Within a year, the Vishari were in full retreat across 3 fronts. Within 2 years, they sent a message asking for terms. The war did not end clean. There were still battles. There were still losses. There were nights when Hannah lay awake and counted, in her head, the soldiers and the worlds that even Pip and the Swarm had not been able to save. She would carry those names for the rest of her life. So would Lucas. So would Doyle. So would all of them. But the war ended. Humans, after 19 long years, had not just held on. They had won. Years later, when the peace was old and the war was something children read about in school, a small woman with gray hair and tired, kind eyes walked into a museum on Earth. It was a quiet afternoon. Sunlight came in through the tall windows. Children moved in slow groups past the displays. In the center of the main hall, in a clear glass case, sat a small, patched, battered drone. Its body was old. There was a long carbon smear on its side that no one had ever cleaned off. Its single blue sensor eye was dim now. It had not flown in many years. Hannah Bell stood in front of the case for a long time. She did not say anything. She put one hand against the glass, just where the carbon smear was. A small boy walked up beside her. He was maybe 7 years old. He had a worn picture book under his arm. He looked up at the drone and then up at her. "Ma'am," he said. "Is that really the one from the stories?" Hannah looked down at him. She smiled, a slow, warm smile. "Yes," she said. "That is the one." The boy looked back at the case. His eyes were wide. "My grandpa says it was broken. He says everybody told her to throw it away." "They did," Hannah said. "But she did not." "No," Hannah said. "She did not." The boy thought about that for a moment. Then he said, very serious, "Why not?" Hannah was quiet for a long time. Outside, somewhere far above, a clean blue sky held no war in it at all. Children played in the museum garden. A flag moved gently in the wind. "Because," Hannah said softly, "sometimes the broken thing is the one that knows how to fight. Sometimes the thing nobody wants is the thing that saves us all. You just have to be willing to listen to it." The boy nodded slowly, as if he understood. Maybe he did. Below the glass case, a small plain plaque carried a single line in plain black letters. It was the same line the museum had put there many years ago, and no one had ever wanted to change it. It read, "They gave her a broken drone. She gave us back the future." Hannah Bell stood there a little longer, with her hand on the glass and a quiet smile on her face. Then she turned and walked out into the sunlight, and the doors closed gently behind her.